Welcome to the Long Island Sound Podcast, where music discovery begins. Here's your host, Steve Yusko.
You know, I've always been curious about what happens behind the scenes when it comes to sound and production. Well, I've got a great episode for you. Brianna Coccia joins us from Production Babes, and she gives us great insights on the music industry, what goes into a production, and what's important to help deliver the expectations for the venue, the artist, and most importantly, the audience. Come, check it out. Have you here.
Thank you so much, Steve, for having me. It's a pleasure's mine to be here.
So what we're doing today is we usually talk to musical artists, and then lately I've been getting into production people, and Brianna's going to help us get in a look and some insights into promotion and what Production Babes does as far as pulling it all together, because it's generally just not the artist who woodsheds their craft. There are people behind the scenes who really kind of pull things together. So that's what you can expect to hear. So Brianna, how did it all come together for you? Give me some background on yourself and why you chose this path.
Oh, so personally, I'll start with my personal story and how Production Babes came about with that a little mixed in.
Great. Wonderful.
Basically, I started from a very young age. I was very blessed to know what I wanted to do. A friend of mine bicycling to my first job, and a friend of mine asking if I needed a ride because I guess I looked like I was struggling, not the biggest sportsman here. And they asked if I needed a ride, and I said, sure. They asked me what I did for a living. I told them I was working at the time, I think, a bagel store, and they said they were an audio engineer. And I was like, wow, never heard that term ever used before. Tell me more.
Right.
Basically explain the concept of audio engineering, which in a brief summary, or at least my favorite way to describe myself as an engineer, is puppeteers of emotions. You know, if you can make somebody feel something with sound, you've done a good job. And of course, there's so many other technicalities to that. But I was basically hitched in love. I started on my journey where I started at 14, and then I went to college and pursued it as well. I went for technical education prior to that certification. So I have some formal education in the audio field and background. But really what was imperative to molding me and my career and my craft was the local music scene that we have here on Long Island. You know, being a part of it from a young age, I was open to, you know, these doors that I had never experienced before. Around that time, call me sheltered. Most of my music had come from, you know, the records in the house or what was on the radio or, you know, eventually some CDs and stuff like that. And so I really didn't think about the locals being, like, music being so in reach. I always had assumed that they were so far. And being somebody who was able to grow alongside them and see their voices develop and them share stories with bearing their souls to these crowds, it truly became something to appreciate and just adore. And eventually it got to a point where, you know, I've engineered a lot of shows and it's very exciting, but I had done so many shows where I was like, ooh, maybe we could do this a little bit better. This could maybe work a little more efficiently here. Ooh, if we added this system and maybe that would make this back end work easier for everybody else. And I kind of had this like technical brain, and I have a bachelor's of business. So I kind of, that business brain mixed with the audio brain went together with my love for local community. And it kind of became this something within me that like I knew I eventually wanted to do. And then in comes Melissa to my journey in this production world, where during the pandemic, she was a part of a broadcasting company that she had created at the time with her partner, with her business partner. It's called Virtually Broadcasting Together. And they were doing a 24-hour broadcast to raise funds for us in the performance arts industries and entertainment, because when everyone was getting their stipends from the government and getting relief or unemployment, it was the entertainment industry that was last to get that relief and those funds and any allocation of help. So basically, she had created this company so that they could raise funds for the people in our community to help disperse those towards them for aid and for relief. And a little birdie had told them that I was doing social media and marketing at the time for the Islip Arts Council, which I still work with, which is the organization that helped put on the art crawl that we just met at.
What's amazing is sound is the primary thing, especially in a podcast. You know, The video can get glitchy, but if the sound, and well, believe me, I've made every mistake you could make when it comes to audio. It really, if you're not catching someone's ear correctly, they're swiping away. They're going somewhere else. So it's so important an aspect of the music business that it's really great what you do. And just to give you a quick aside,
Yeah.
how many times I've gone and seen such live music, okay, performer to a trio, a band or whatever, they don't have a person, sound engineer in the audience. And I'm a pretty bold guy, I'll go up and say, hey, I'm not hearing so-and-so's vocal or the guitar's a little, I hope you don't mind. I always ask, do you mind if I give you some feedback? Because they don't hear what the audience is always hearing. And that's kind of key. So anyway, it's good you do what you do.
No, it's you bring up a very good point, because sometimes, unfortunately, it depends on the venue you're at. Your mix position may not be the best listening position, and you're not getting a true reflection of what it sounds like to the audience. So it is pivotal to have some feedback. I know that it can get tricky in hairy situations. There's been very stressful, high-strung moments where people tap me on the shoulder, and I'm like, you don't even know the fires I'm putting out right now, man, but I appreciate it. But it is imperative to be able to have more input and to be open to it. I think as humans, we can always continue to learn, and we should.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the dynamic of working with the band or the performer, right? And you can easily get into that situation where, hey, I need more. I need to hear myself more on the monitor. I need this, or you can get like herding cats. You can get 15 opinions on things. But the engineer's got to be the final say, I would assume. You tell me if I'm wrong.
I think it really does depend on the scenario that you're in. You do have to, like, coming from my background as I'm the booker, and then sometimes I end up being the engineer as well.
Okay.
It ends up being a job where you have to make a decision between, well, what does the venue want? And will that impede on the quality of the show that is given to them and the audience? It kind of comes down to some bigger questions of, like, in the simplest form, yes, you want it to sound good and you want to do what's best and what you think works. But then you also have to take into consideration what your decisions and your actions might have on the bigger of the event as a whole. Like, that venue host, and thankfully I've never really encountered this, as the venue hosts very hard on what they want, and if they don't get it that way, then the whole show is done and everything is over.
Right.
There are people who do work like that, and I'm fortunate enough to work in a community that I work with a lot of vendors and bookers and just venues and people who really do value the craft and the artistry of what we're creating. I don't thankfully get too many limitations put on me. Most of the time it's just a little louder or a little quieter, and that's pretty nice.
It's funny, I got to throw a shout out to one of my early guests, a guy named Eric McCormick, who is a looper, kind of like Rory Kelly. They can layer tracks. It's just an art form of itself. And he gave me a piece of advice. He says, it's always better as a single performer to be a little bit lower. It's great when somebody says, hey, can you turn it up louder? As opposed to the reverse, can you turn it down? Can you turn it down? It can have different dynamics to it. So I was like, wow, that makes a good point. And you brought it up too. It really, you have the ebb and flow of what you're trying to deliver in the performance, but you got to take in what the venue is expecting. Okay. Is the venue expecting entertainment or background or right? There's so many different choices. And I guess that's key. And this would be a question to you as a person who promotes and books. You must go through a laundry list of getting to know what they're buying per se, as far as when you speak to a venue operator. Is that correct?
Could you say the question again?
Yeah. So the question is, I know I kind of rambled there a little bit, is how do you find out the expectations of the venue with whatever you're presenting to them as entertainment or the performer?
Good question. I think it depends on the dynamic of the original relationship with the booker or the venue.
Okay.
If it's something that I'm creating myself and, I come to this venue and I say, I want to host this here, I'm going to put this on. It's different than a venue coming to me and saying, we want an event to happen here. Can you make it happen?
Okay.
Because, you approach it from either, like, for instance, the Production Babes open mic that me and Melissa host once a month, every third Monday at the Shakedown Inn. Basically, we met with Brian Gonzalez in the beginning, and he was one of the first people to truly believe in us. And he was one of the first people to say, we're missing something here. And I feel like I need you guys to do it. And he just had a dream and a vision of bringing community together and holding a safe space for artists all alike. He already interacted with us in our community. And it was, from that point in the beginning, it was definitely an opinion. What is going to make the venue happy? What are they trying to bring here? What type of crowd? What type of entertainment? Coming down to even the flow of the format, are they expecting a rigid structure? It's not your typical venue. It's not a bar. You're not shouting over people. So they're not caring about beers being sold and liquor on the shelf, So it definitely had a different dynamic of actually wanting to serve that community. And eventually it has become a little bit of a home of ours. And Brian gives us a lot of creative freedom with what we think we could do there. He's always excited to hear our next idea on, well, what if we make a live theme song for the open mic at the open mic with random performers and we just throw them on there. And so definitely comes down to what is happening if I'm reaching out to a venue and booking there, or if the venue's reached out to me, because I'm always going to go with the default of the person who's created it, the person who's putting it on, because in the end, it's the organization business that you're going to have to, I think that's my production default in, my business mind, where it's like, okay, well, I'm working this at business to business. If I'm working with the venue doing something for them, where I might be working like, business to customer when I am working something for myself.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I remember talking to Mark Burford, who is the founder of the Blue Point Brewery, and his whole aspect was about building community, and he's done tremendous amount of things with Patchogue over the years. And he said, it's Steve, it's different, and I'm paraphrasing, it's different for a brewery. There's a lot of microbreweries all over the place popping up. He goes, we have a lot of space. We don't care about table space. Where if you go into a brew pub or restaurant or smaller venue, they're like, hey, we're giving up seats and we're paying the band, the entertainment, whatever. So there's kind of an ebb and tide, a give and take there of a bit of a sacrifice for, the question which you must get. The question must be, how many people are you going to draw? What's their following? Show me their Instagram, right?
How many people stay there? Like, how many people do you think you could get to buy food? What's the head count? What's the expected draw? Again, very thankful for a lot of the community that I work with that don't normally care too much about. It's still something in the equation. You still have to consider how you're going to make money at the end of the day and pay your bills, but care more about, well, what's the community going to take away from this? How are they going to feel?
Right. And I tell you, and I've said this 1,000 times on this podcast, when my wife Debbie and I go out, the first thing that we figure out, okay, where's the live music? So I want to have an experience, and we want to support live music. We've always enjoyed ourselves with live music, and so that experience mindset is kind of key. And now I assume your approach as let's call you a promoter, okay, is to go in and create the event and bring something unique that's going to be a draw, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you actually used the word promoter, because I think I definitely fit in that category, but I definitely more identify with being a curator, because I curate experiences for people. Like, I don't get to, I do have the marketing background. I can market events and whatnot, but my true bread and butter is creating set lists and the flow of events and figuring out, well, if I could open up with a Luke Jam here, then maybe we'll be in a good space for an interpretive poetry dance here, and then kind of figuring out how the community is going to interact with the space and the people in it. What type of food should we have at this event? Should it be more, maybe if I'm doing a Hispanic Heritage Month celebration or something like that, like everything's authentic, everything's a part of that theme.
Right. There's a thread that's going to run through it. I would almost say it's a parallel to like a corporate event planner, right? Yeah. To but I think I would assume, tell me if I'm wrong, I would assume that you're a lot more free to go, hey, this is something that's current, that's in the minds of people that we can get a draw from that they would find interest in. And how do you weave that thread through to someone walking away saying, hey, that really flowed? Or, and I'll be critical, I've gone to open mics or I won't mention names, but where it's just like, it's like starting and stopping, and it was just it lost the vibe, I guess.
It lost
Maybe that was, yeah, and maybe that's a cranky old man that you're talking to right here that goes, it could have been better, even though the music was good. But, hurting the cats. I don't know why I keep on going back there. Eating the cats, and sorry, so that's the election's on my mind, but
no, you're good. No, I think that it is like herding cats. It's, it's like a circus, and you have to figure out how all the monkeys are talking together and communicating. And with the idea, I lost my thought there. Now I'm thinking monkeys and circus and herd cats.
I tell you what, that might be a good sign for us to just take a quick break, Brianna. And when we come back, I really want to get your thoughts on promotion and on the scene. I really want to talk about how you see the music scene on Long Island today. Hey, everybody. We're with one of the production babes, Brianna, and we'll be right back.
Are you ready for the ultimate podcasting adventure? The Long Island Sound podcast offers you not one, but 2 ways to engage with our captivating content. Tune in to our audio podcast on your favorite platform and let your imagination paint vivid pictures of Long Island stories. Or if you're craving a visual feast, catch our video podcast on Spotify and on the Long Island Sound YouTube channel. Double the options, double the excitement.
Hey, everybody. We're back with Production Babes and Brianna. And Brianna, before we took the break, I really want to get your take from your perspective as a promoter, as a marketing person. Tell me about the music scene on Long Island, the ups and the downs, everything about it.
Great question. I think there's a lot to it. It's like its own living organism, truly, because it does breathe. It has its bad days, it has its good days. I truly love the community that we have here. I think that it's kind of magical because we have these different micro clusters from different parts of the island. You have your out east families, out in Southampton and Sag Harbor over there, like the Sag Harbor Music Festival kind of scene. And then you also have the Suffolk County music scene, and then you have the Nassau music scene, and then there's some microcosms that go in the in-between that kind of ebb and flow. I feel like there's a little bit of a Venn diagram of like people who share in certain ones, but then there's also, there's this, you get the city in it too. So we have this like giant living, breathing organism.
Okay.
Has these different micro clusters of people and different styles and also sometimes different expectations. So I have a great appreciation for the community that we have and the diversity that you can kind of tap into on any day of the week. I think the original question is how it is booking and marketing as well in these.
Yeah. I guess what I'm interested in. So let's paint the picture of how things are approached in the business. You've got solo acts, you've got trios, you've got bands, you've got party music people, okay? And then you've got the different genres, okay? This is my assumption, that artists will go out and they'll just, hit the phones and hit every place that they can to try and get gigs, okay? And it's all over the map. I mean, there's a couple places out there I've heard that say, hey, come on in, look, whatever tips, they're yours. Like, wait a second, right? I think there's some venues that look at you like a purveyor, like you're like the meat or the soda or the beer guy, you're just an aspect of it. So, and then I think the dynamic of COVID and the quarantine put a whole kibosh on things. I still remember we couldn't dance on the dance floor, when they had tents outside.
Couldn't even attend unless you were sitting at a table.
Right. So I'm interested on what your challenges are and how you see the market. Anyway, I'm kind of babbling, but I'm interested in your picture of how you approach things. What are some of the challenges? Why would somebody use a promoter or a booking agent as opposed to, hey, I can just do this myself? Does that seem fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Okay.
you bring up, there's so many different points that I would love to attack there,
Please.
like the COVID, COVID times, there's so many things I have to say. There's so many ideas there, but COVID times basically did create, I think, an uptick in people kind of advocating for themselves and what they deserve. There definitely was a little bit in the beginning there where everyone was scrambling for money and you took whatever gig you could get just to pay your bills. You sometimes are making decisions that might not be the most safest decisions for your health and those around you, because you knew you had to make a living, you had to work. And I also come from like a theatrical background as well with the sound. So, it was like working in theaters and having to double mask and having to test every day and go to an urgent care and take that time out. And it can be very strenuous on your body.
Your whole psyche.
The passion that you have for it. So I think that was a difficult time, but I think coming out of it, it really taught musicians that they needed to advocate for themselves and what they deserve. And there's different ways that people could go about it. There are a lot of musicians that do book themselves, and they do the old, cold calls, call the place, ask who the manager is or the booking person, or they'll even show up to venues. I think oftentimes with the music scenes that I was talking about earlier and how they kind of all go into each other a little bit like families, after a while, you end up knowing a lot of these people, and a lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is, oh, you should talk to my friend Bree. She does venues sometimes. Or, I've gotten emails from people from states away or out of the country asking to book them in the country because they're applying for music visas and they heard that we had good community here. And it's a lot of word of mouth and advocacy from the community. Having a good experience where you're respected by a venue, you're taken seriously, your art form is respected, you're paid what you're worth, the timeline is accurate, the things that you are told are going to happen, and that seems like small things to want or checks, like boxes to check. And, that's something that we definitely pride ourselves in is checking all those boxes and making sure that we can meet all those needs so that because what we're doing is you're sharing art. So I think people would use a booker, or at least in my experience, people will come to me when they know that I work with these different types of venues and
okay.
The curation style that's happening there. They'll be like, I really want to play a gig at Blue Point Brewery, or I really want to play a gig with Shakedown or Long Island Glass. And these are just places that we've hosted events or worked in collaboration with these venues. And when artisans and musicians want to be a part of that, they'll see the common thread, they'll see the connections, or they'll hear from so-and-so that this person knows where to go or who to talk to. I think it really comes down to what they want to get out of it and and also like how much time do they have? Because as an artist yourself, especially as I feel like a lot of people these days you are your booker, you're your own promoter, you're your own graphic designer, your own website developer, publicist, photographer, videographer, you're the band leader, you're the songwriter, you're the mixer, master, engineer. Like you're playing 20 different roles and trying to juggle all of them. So sometimes it's a little easier to go to somebody that can create a well-curated experience and ask them, hey, I really want to make this happen, or I'd love to fill up my August and November. Do you have anything on the books that you're trying to fill? And there's a lot of different companies on the island that do all this. Like, there's Rideways Entertainment, Chad Chadwick, there's Joe Conserva from Startful Studios, there's Jackie Guma from Equilibrium Bookings, Production Babes, we do events too, and there's so many other people out there in microcosms and clusters. But what it comes down to is we're all community connectors. So when you reach out to a booker or promoter or a company like us or an organization like any of the people I've just mentioned, you're doing it because you love the community that they have built, and you're loving the style of show that they might put on or the venues that they work with, and you want to be a part of that movement too.
Yeah, what I find interesting too, because I've tried to get friends gigs, I'll be very honest with you, is you've established these relationships, and someone coming new into it, whether it's an artist or a friend helping them, is they're starting from ground zero to try and build those relationships to get that chance and then go on from that. It can be a very long, arduous process. But then if I go to a booking agent like yourself and say, hey, wait, you've got it, you know the vibe of a particular area, you get to experience what they can bring, what the artist can bring, and then you fit them into that piece of the puzzle, where it makes sense. Now, I'll throw something else at you, which is kind of on the converse. I'm a real proponent of original music, and a friend of mine, Mike Nugent, said, hey, it's the era of the tribute band, and that's challenging. You got cover bands, you've got tribute bands, you've got original music artists, and everything else in between. And it's hard to find, at least from my experience, those venues that consistently say, yeah, we'll take on original artists. Of course, everyone does covers, right? Even the pros out there, right? But I think it comes down to a financial aspect of things. Hey, it's somebody who likes Led Zeppelin. Let's have a Led Zeppelin cover band, a tribute band or whatever. So is that your experience as well?
Say that Long Island as a whole, as much as it pains my heart to say it because I love original music, and that's truly what I've been advocating for since I started in the music scene, it definitely is largely cover band based, tribute band based. It is basically what makes money, unfortunately. It is notorious for cover bands to be almost anywhere you go. If there's music and they're advertising for live music, most of the times it is a cover band or a tribute band or something that people know, because that comes with, like you brought up, financial insecurity and anxiety, because you can't guarantee that somebody else is going to like the original music, because us as humans and why we listen to music is for a connection. It's for recognition in one another within the song and within the melody. So when you're playing classic rock jams that people grew up on, and they know you could be singing in the same song that somebody else in the back of the room singing, and all of a sudden you guys are buddies and having a good time, and the drinks are flowing and the food is coming, and you create that experience. So it's easier to bet on something that works than to take a riskier chance and step into the waters of original music and supporting artisans in that way and their craft, because you don't know. The thing is you don't know who's going to show up most of the time. Long Island is notorious for people not buying tickets to things until 2 days before. It is the statistical fact. We are undecided, especially in the post-COVID world that we live in now. People don't know if they're going to make it places, and they'd rather wait to RSVP than to RSVP ahead of time. So it becomes very tricky for bookers, event people, even with the cover band sometimes, to guarantee that slot. But when you have some form of recognition within it and something that makes them feel safe and secure, they're easier to take that choice in that pathway. Unless they have another heart or appreciation for the music and for the art form and for what's happening in the community, like our arts councils do.
Right. It's, and I think you're in a good spot, because I think there is, once we get past this election, and this is my hope. The hope is to rebuild community and unity and bring people back together. I'm tired of the politics in my face all the time. And, one thing I love about art and music is it's common ground. I can have a difference with you, but music heals the world. It really does. And it's such a great service that you provide. But I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Okay. And I'm just going to give you, I've worked with a lot of older musicians, right? And they've come back and first let's talk about self-promotion, right? I think, and I'm generalizing here, the younger generation who is adept at social media, have Instagram accounts and Twitter and or X, whatever the hell you calling it now, they're adept at it. They're adept at self-promotion, okay? And some of the older artists are more humble. They're great at what they do, but they don't boast about it. They rather play and show you what I do as opposed to self-promotion. It's just small microcosm of the experience that I have. And where the hell am I going with this? I don't know. I just lost my train of thought. This is my train of thought. Along with that, there have been horror stories of booking agents and promoters on taking advantage of artists, and I'll give, and tell me if I'm wrong. Hey, Billy, $100 a man? Okay, $100 a man. And the promoter turns around and sells it for whatever they can get and goes in the pocket. That's a stereotype. But is that something that you fight against? You agree to a certain extent, or?
I think it's a good point to bring up, because in the world that we live in, it's easy when you don't understand or know the full backside to understand how that dynamic would work. So in your example where a booker might sell to a band, I'll pay you $100 a head. There's 4 people in the band. It's $400. And then they go to the venue and they say, all right, it's a $600 flat fee. Now, in the plain eye, it looks like they're skimming $200 off the top, and you're getting scammed out of it. But then when you think about extra parts to it, there are percentages when you talk to different bookers and promoters where I make this percentage off of what you make. Just like if you were an artist in a gallery and you put a painting up, they get 20%, 10 to 20% of what the art is worth, right? So if I'm negotiating with a band and they say, okay, you really, what you're doing there is you're selling yourself like an entity, like an art piece, stamped as $400. So there's different galleries and places that will up price with that in mind of they want to make $400 off this piece. We're now going to up market however percentage to make sure they get the 400 and we get the 20% cut that we need. So they'll just increase it by that 20% or whatever the difference is so that they can get it. So there is sometimes without an explanation, there are agreements and things like that do happen that without a full background of like what was the agreement or what is their usual stipend or however, it can look a little shady. Now there are shady people. There are definitely people out there that I know that don't have a great heart and maybe are a little more not in it for the right reasons. And I definitely am thankful I don't work with any of those people.
Hey, good for you.
And I try to stay away from that because again, like at the end of the day, I often don't even take a payday for any of the artists that I book or promote. I do that because I just want them to I just believe in them so wholeheartedly. So I think people are definitely in it for different reasons. I think without full information, you don't always know the full story.
Yeah.
Bookers have to make a cut too in some way. People have to make a living.
I agree. 100% agree with that. And what it comes down to is setting expectations.
Transparency too. Right.
It's transparency, trust, and setting expectations of what's going to be delivered. The other end of the horror stories are, hey, and I've asked about this. Hey, about this festival. Okay, what are they paying? Oh, this is for your exposure. And you get some hot dogs and pizza out of the deal. You've been there, right?
Oh, 100%. Sometimes it's about not having the funds to do so, but believing in the project anyways. Personally, like I've ran a music festival for a few years, and in the first couple of years, we couldn't afford to pay musicians or artists or anything like that. But we wanted to create a space that hosted it for the community. Everybody was in it because they wanted to be there and because they wanted to share some form of their art form, The audio engineers, the studios involved, nobody got paid. We didn't get paid, Nope. At the end of the day, it was a full 100% transparency. Hi, I appreciate your craft. I can't pay you for it. I understand if you say no, and I understand if you need to pass on it for another gig, but I'd love for you to be a part of this representation of the community and the art that we have here. And I would say that it was magical to watch the relationship that came from that. However, I think it is very disrespectful to people in their art form when there are venues out there that go, I'll give you a beer and a dinner. Why aren't you going to play for 4 hours for me and bring your own sound and run it all by yourself? Right. We have people here every night. It's 400 people. You're absolutely they're going to follow you. They'll buy your merch.
Right. They'll buy your CD, but nobody has unless you're selling a CD player at the same time. It's not.
What are they going to use them for? Coasters these days? I love CDs. I got a giant collection of it. I got my CD books and everything cataloged, but not everybody's like that. So it's not a guarantee anymore. It's not that, and people are doing this to support themselves, and they're doing this not only because they care, but they need to feed themselves. So that exposure bullshit, use my language here.
No, you're right.
Cut it.
Let's call it what it is, because that's the way we have to look at it. We have to present what the hell's going on there. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Brianna. You have a client that comes to you and says, hey, I want you to get me X, Y, and Z. Okay. what are some of the tips that you would give them? Let's say they're a very good artist and they've got good music. They're solid, okay, in your eyes. What are the extracurricular activities that they need to do to help put them in the best light so you can represent them?
I think so. In this day and age, definitely with the social media, like we were talking about before, it's not everything, but having a good social presence definitely gets your voice out there. I'm not really looking at followers or things like that, and they do become important in big venues like Webster Hall or, Gramercy and other places that are like, well, can you actually draw people here? Because their business is to just host events that people enjoy and have people come to them. So what was the question? One more time.
So the question is, so I'm a newbie and I come to you, and what extracurricular activities? So they have to have a social presence to an extent.
So as a newbie, I would say to craft your voice.
Okay.
Starting with that social presence is definitely a good way to have it. I think honestly, it again, this is maybe my business mind, but I think it definitely works because you have to sell yourself as an entity. So what you really need to do is, go back to the basics, do a SWOT analysis, do your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, analyze yourself as if you were an entity or something to sell. And when you are an artist who's really engulfed in your craft and you really love it, you might not want to put a number to it, and that can be hard to do. So sometimes this is a good way to get feedback from your friends or people around you who you trust, who know your music and know you. Create an idea or an image of what you are and what you offer to people and what they gain with that. And then figure out what your sales pitch is on how to tell that to people.
You're what we call the elevator pitch, right?
Exactly. We're in the business of hospitality, whether we like it or not. Because the only way to share our art is we need to get through that door first. And to get through that door, we need to sell ourselves. And not sell ourselves in a bad way, but sell ourselves in a way that's going to make somebody understand what they're getting. So yeah, I think really you have to reach in within yourself and find your voice and then figure out how you want to share that with the world. I hate having to constantly be upkept with social media and things like that. So I know the annoyance that it is to do so.
Right.
But you got to figure out how it is you want to present yourself to people so that you can do it in a manner that gets your point across, especially with this day of clutter, of nonsense, of bullshit through the airwaves. You got to be able to sift through it, and you've got to sell yourself in 7 seconds, 4 seconds.
Right.
So
right.
I think finding your voice and figuring out how you want to present yourself is a big thing. And some of your extracurricular activities I would advise on is doing research. So if you're going to go play a gig, like there's the Ladybug Music Festival, I believe it's in Pennsylvania or something.
Or Delaware. Hey.
Yes. And if you want to play that date, right, and you're already secured to play that date, okay. Now look on your travel trip on how you're getting there and find venues along the way. Oh, I remember this one musician that I met at this event over here and they lived in this town. I'm going to DM them and ask them if they want to play a show together. And then you create that connection with them. So you want to find your community. That would be a big thing. So I'd say you have to spend the time to research it and also be a part of it, because part of it is showing up for other people and having your face being recognized in a room. And it can be very difficult to have another job because, a lot of the starting ages of being a musician, you can't afford to support yourself off of just those wages. So that's the goal one day. But to get there, you have to have a plan. So find your community, find your voice, and figure out the back end before you do the front end. Sometimes they're like, people I feel like get really caught up in, well, I got to learn 100 songs and I got to know how to pick up one from every genre and from every artist. And I got to make my own. I got to make 20 originals. And it's like, yes, it's good to have an art form. It's good to share it. But first start with how do you want to share it, how you can share it, and just keep on honing that craft, keep on learning, and never stop learning. If there's something that you don't know, if you want to tour, go home, open that computer, and research it. Figure out what you need to do. What are the steps? Take the big picture and find the first smallest one.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. Production Babes, what type of things do you put together to put out in the world? Kind of give me a laundry list of some of the things you've done, what you've got coming up in the near future. And by the way, just as a side to our audience, everything about the Production Babes, and their links will be in the description below. Right below the title, you'll find some hyperlinks to go visit them and find out more.
Thank you, Steve. So yeah, with Production Babes, basically our slogan is we check all the boxes. We don't cut corners, we check boxes.
Okay.
Basically, we could service you anything from small event curation to large scale event curation, like music festival wise. And we have advised on marketing and media. So some of the things that we've done in this past year, we were just a part of the marketing team for Alive After 5 in Patchogue. And we helped advise on that account. And we were the social media managers for this summer season. So we also advised and we sat in on the organizational meetings and helped out with that. So that's one of the services that we helped create. We did some live coverage over there. It was amazing to work together with the community and a lot of these just wonderful businesses or vendors, artists, musicians, bookers. It's so much talent, so many people. Even the chamber itself is just amazing. So that was something we got to do. The art crawl in Bayshore where we met, we curated a poetry stage right by the Bolton Center. And I think prior they had it was Poets Alley stage over there as well. And this year they brought in the Babes and we elevated that and brought some more poets in there, had some music going, had some color corners. A lot of our events where you go, there's usually a lot of colors, probably some bubbles, some coloring stations, and definitely some interesting artisans and musicians. Definitely things that make you sit and go, wow. So those are definitely the two big events we just did. We also host our own monthly open mic at the Shakedown in Medford. Happens every third Monday of the month, unless specified on our socials. Okay. And we usually have a local feature, and there's time for shopping. We usually have a break in between just to deduce that down and give some time to patron the shop and appreciate what we have there. And upcoming, we haven't announced it yet, but here's your sneak peek. It'll come out soon.
All right. Ooh.
November 30th, we're going to have a triple feature open mic at Long Island Glass in Holtzville. And that's going to be basically like our open mic, but it's going to be on a bigger scale and a longer format. And it's going to have 3 features. And then after that, we're going to come back to Long Island Glass for a Christmas party.
I'm not familiar with Long Island Glass. What type of venue is that?
So Long Island Glass is, so we do a lot of things in unconventional venues. We do a lot of things in places that people just want to have something exist. And we figure out a way to bring a community there. So Long Island Glass already had their community, but they love the one that we have. We've kind of become a little family. Long Island Glass is ran by Joe and Brian, and they are 2 wonderful people. Joe is a wonderful glass artist. So he does like glass blowing and he creates different pieces. Anything with glass, you name it, they've done it. They actually were just on News 12, I believe, last week for a special. There's some different workshops that they have there. They have an art gallery of the different artists and artisans that they have involved in their studio. So it's a glass studio, but it also has their big art gallery rooms. And they also have a lounge area that we convert basically.
What I find fascinating about that is it's almost like the pop-up idea. The pop-up stores and stuff that you'll see in and around Brooklyn and Manhattan, where a brand will all of a sudden create something. And I ran into it's called Bednark Studios. They're in Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Yeah. That's their whole gig, is they create these, they put a lot of stuff into these things that are quickies, that are just there today, gone tomorrow. And I think that falls into, for me, to the excitement of an event. Hey, this is cool. I'm getting introduced to glass blowing, which I would never try to find anywhere, but that's an art in itself. And now if I can marry it to music and some other things that kind of are neighboring that, wow, what a cool experience that could be.
It's kind of magical, and we're very thankful to be able to be in a space like that, because we've done the Christmas party. That's what we're going to do in December. I believe it's December 28th, and we've done that for the past 2 years, I believe, or so. And that's always a really good turnout of community because we have, Bird Glass does a local present drive for the kids. I think it's Toys Drive for kids. And basically there's donations for that in the community. We also have live glass blowers in the actual studio area. So it's in a safe distance enough to observe, but also see the artists at work and it's an unconventional space. You walk in through the gallery and you're seeing different local pieces of glass hung. And then you walk through their little entryway studio and you see the different sandblasted glass cups that they do with etching on it and things like that, and different bowl pieces, then rigs that they create and craft. And then you walk into a larger, wide open room with long ceilings and usually these amazing paintings on the art from whatever gallery show they just curated. And then you walk into the lounge and there's these different booths that you can stick into and have a cozy cup of cocoa with somebody and just talk. It's kind of like you go into each room and it's like different worlds. And that's definitely what we try to do at every event that we do. We bring experiences. And I think a newer term that people use more now for that type of curation, I guess, would be activations. They call them activation stations, experiences for people to engage with multiple different senses. And
I tell you that I learned something. You brought a lot to the table today on this episode. I find it fascinating. One, I love being around creative people, whether it's an artisan or a musician. There are so many great stories, so many great experiences that you have this sandbox that you play in. It sounds like it's really exciting. And I got to tell you, Brianna, it was a real joy to have you on the podcast, and you've delivered a lot to our audience out there on booking, creating events, and doing what you do. It was a real pleasure to have you on the episode.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. It's been really fun sharing with you what I love about this community. And it's cool to see a fellow member and pivotal pioneer of the community doing what they do. So thank you.
And we met in community in Bayshore, so that brings it full circle. Hey, everybody. Check out Production Babes. The information is in the description below. Man, you got an event coming up, you want something special, got to check out the Babes. Coming right here from Steve. All right, till next time, we'll see you. Be well. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.